The rain drummed steadily against the windows of Rebecca's townhouse in Portland, Oregon, creating a cocoon of sound that matched her internal isolation. At 39 years old, she sat at her kitchen table, staring at the business card in her hand. Beto Alves, sexologist and tantric practitioner, specializing in female libido restoration. Rebecca had been a nurse for 15 years, dedicating her life to caring for others in the intensive care unit at Oregon Health and Science University. She was exceptional at her job, compassionate, skilled, unflappable in crisis. But somewhere along the way, she had become so focused on others' physical needs that she had completely disconnected from her own body. Her libido hadn't just diminished, it had vanished entirely. It had been over 2 years since she'd felt even a flicker of desire. At first, she'd attributed it to stress, to exhaustion from double shifts during the pandemic. But the world had normalized, and still, nothing. No spark, no longing, no sensation of wanting to be touched or to touch herself. She felt like a ghost inhabiting her own body. What disturbed Rebecca most was that she didn't just lack sexual desire. She had lost the ability to feel pleasure of any kind. Food tasted bland. Music didn't move her. Beautiful sunsets left her unmoved. It was as if someone had turned down the volume on all her senses, leaving her functioning but not truly living. Her physician had run tests, hormones, thyroid, everything, all normal. A therapist had suggested antidepressants, but Rebecca instinctively knew this wasn't depression in the conventional sense. This was deeper. This was a disconnection from her very life force. Her colleague and friend Sarah had recommended Beto after working with him herself following her own divorce. "He's not like a regular therapist," Sarah had said. "He works with the body, with energy, with breath. He helped me remember that I was a sexual being, not just a caregiver and a mother. I know it sounds unconventional, but Rebecca, you have nothing to lose." Rebecca had researched him thoroughly before reaching out. His credentials were impressive. Trained in sexology, somatic therapy, and various tantric traditions. His approach, described on his website, focused on reconnecting women with their innate sensuality and life force through what he called embodied practices. Finally, after weeks of deliberation, she had sent an inquiry. His response had been warm and professional, and now she had an appointment scheduled for the following Tuesday. As she placed the card on her refrigerator, Rebecca felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time, a tiny flicker of hope. Session 1. The Assessment. Beto's practice was located in a converted Victorian home in the Pearl District, filled with natural light and the scent of lavender. When Rebecca entered, she was greeted by a man with calm brown eyes and an immediately reassuring presence. At 35, Beto had the bearing of someone comfortable in his own skin, present, grounded, unhurried. "Rebecca, welcome," he said, gesturing to a comfortable seating area with cushioned chairs and soft throws. "Please, make yourself at home." The space felt intentionally designed to soothe, soft textures, warm colors, plants in every corner. There was a bodywork table in one area, but it was covered with a beautiful textile and didn't dominate the room. Once they were seated, Beto began simply, "Tell me what brought you here." Rebecca found herself speaking more honestly than she'd intended. She described the gradual disappearance of sensation, the numbness that had settled over her life like fog over the Portland hills. She talked about her work saving lives while feeling dead inside herself. She admitted with difficulty that she couldn't remember the last time she'd felt desire, for anything or anyone. "I don't feel broken exactly," she said, struggling to articulate it. "I function. I'm good at my job. I have friends. But I feel like I'm watching my life happen instead of living it. Especially when it comes to my body. It's like I'm completely cut off from it." Beto listened with complete attention, occasionally nodding, but never interrupting. When Rebecca finished, he was quiet for a moment before speaking. What you're describing is a form of dissociation, he said gently. It's actually quite common, especially among caregivers. You've spent so long attending to others' physical needs, managing trauma, witnessing suffering, that you've unconsciously shut down your own capacity to feel. It's a protective mechanism, but it's left you disconnected from your life force, what we might call your libido in the broadest sense. Can it be fixed? Rebecca asked, hearing the vulnerability in her own voice. This isn't about fixing, Beto replied. You're not broken. This is about remembering, about creating safety for sensation to return. Your body hasn't forgotten how to feel. It's just been in protective shutdown. Our work together will be about gently inviting feeling back. He explained his methodology, starting with education about the nervous system and how trauma and chronic stress impact embodiment, then moving into breathwork to reconnect with bodily sensation, somatic practices to release held tension, and eventually, his specialized technique called intimate alchemy, a tantric approach to cultivating and circulating sexual energy. We'll proceed at whatever pace feels right, Beto assured her. The goal isn't to force anything, but to create the conditions where your natural aliveness can resurface. Rebecca left with homework, 10 minutes of daily conscious breathing, placing her hands on her body and simply noticing, without judgment, what she could or couldn't feel. Sessions 2 through 6, Thawing the Freeze. The early sessions focused on nervous system regulation. Beto taught Rebecca about the polyvagal theory, how her nervous system had likely become stuck in a state of shutdown, neither in active stress response, nor in true rest and restoration. Your body has been in survival mode for so long, he explained during their third session, that it doesn't remember how to be in pleasure mode, in connection mode, in aliveness mode. The breathwork was harder than Rebecca expected. Such a simple instruction. Breathe deeply into your belly. Notice the sensation. But she kept spacing out, her mind wandering to patients, to tasks, to anything except the present moment. That's the dissociation, Beto observed without criticism. Your system is habituated to checking out. We're retraining it to check in. By the 4th week, something began to shift. During her morning breathwork practice, Rebecca suddenly became aware of her heartbeat. Not intellectually. She obviously knew her heart was always beating. But she felt it. The steady rhythm, the pulse of blood through her body. It was such a simple thing, but tears sprang to her eyes at the recognition of life within her. At their next session, she shared this with Beto, and his face lit up with genuine delight. This is beautiful, he said. Your body is starting to trust that it's safe to feel again. These small moments of presence are the foundation everything else builds on. The 5th and 6th sessions introduced gentle movement, slow, conscious stretches designed to release the chronic tension Rebecca held in her shoulders, her jaw, her hips. As she moved under Beto's guidance, he encouraged her to make sound. We often hold back our voices along with our feelings, he explained. Giving voice to sensation, even just through sighs or hums, helps move energy. Rebecca felt foolish at first, but gradually allowed herself to sigh as she stretched, to hum as she breathed. And something unexpected happened. She began to feel emotion. Old grief surfaced. Anger at sacrifices she'd made without questioning. Sadness at years of disconnection. This is the thaw, Beto said quietly, as Rebecca cried during a hip-opening stretch. The body releases what it's been storing. This is healthy, necessary. From Session 7, The First Spark. 2 months into their work together, Rebecca experienced her first genuine physical sensation of pleasure since she could remember. Beto had introduced a practice of self-touch, not sexual, but exploratory. Learning to touch her own skin with curiosity and presence, the way one might touch a beautiful piece of fabric or a flower petal. Most of us touch ourselves only functionally, Beto had explained. We wash, we scratch, we tend to pain. But we rarely touch ourselves with conscious appreciation, with tenderness. One evening, following the guided practice Beto had recorded for her, Rebecca sat on her bed and began to slowly touch her own arms. At first, it felt mechanical, strange, but she persisted, breathing deeply, trying to stay present. She ran her fingers along her forearm, feeling the softness of the skin on the inside, the finer hairs. She traced her palm, noticing the lines, the warmth. She moved to her collarbone, her neck, her face, and then, as her fingers brushed against her earlobe, she felt it, a tiny spark of pleasant sensation. Nothing dramatic, but definitely something. A little tingle, a whisper of, "That feels good." Rebecca froze, hardly daring to breathe. She touched her ear again. There it was, subtle but real. Pleasure. Sensation. She started to cry, overwhelmed by the simplicity of it. Such a small thing, a pleasant feeling from touching her own ear. But after years of numbness, it felt like a miracle. At her next session, she shared the experience with Beto, still emotional about it. "This is the beginning," he said, his own eyes bright with joy for her. "Your nervous system is remembering that pleasure is safe, that sensation is safe. From here, we build." Mater. Sessions 8 through 11. Expanding capacity. The following weeks focused on gradually expanding Rebecca's capacity for sensation and pleasure. Beto taught her about the connection between breath, sound, and the flow of energy through the body. Sexual energy isn't separate from life energy, he explained. It's the same force, creative, vital, alive. When we're disconnected from our sexuality, we're disconnected from our vitality in general. Rebecca practiced daily now, and the changes were becoming noticeable. She found herself actually tasting her food again. The coffee she'd been drinking mechanically for years suddenly had flavor. Rich, complex, pleasurable. A walk in Forest Park made her notice the green of the ferns, the sound of birds, the feeling of air on her skin. "My world is getting its color back," she told Beto. "Like I've been living in grayscale and suddenly there's hue." Beto introduced more advanced practices, moving energy consciously through the body using breath and visualization, making sound to amplify sensation, gentle movements that activated what he called the second chakra, the energy center associated with sexuality and creativity. "You've been living entirely in your upper body, head and heart," Beto observed. "Your work demands that. But the lower body, the belly, the pelvis, the legs, this is where our root, our aliveness, our sexual energy lives. We're inviting you back down into your whole body." During their 11th session, Beto broached the topic of intimate alchemy. "I believe you're ready to learn this practice," he said, "but I want you to understand what it is before you decide." He explained that intimate alchemy was the culmination of everything they'd been building toward, a tantric practice that involved consciously generating and circulating sexual energy. It could be practiced alone or with a partner, but the key was presence, breath, and intention, rather than outcome. Traditional sexuality often focuses on building toward release, toward orgasm, Beto said. Intimate alchemy is about cultivation and circulation. Learning to generate sexual energy, then move it through your entire body, nourishing all of you rather than just seeking discharge. For Rebecca, he explained, the practice would begin with self-exploration, learning to touch herself with the same presence she'd been practicing, but extending that touch to her entire body, including her genitals, and using breath and sound to amplify and circulate the energy. The goal isn't orgasm, though that may happen, Beto clarified. The goal is to awaken your sexual energy as a healing, vitalizing force, to remember that your body is a source of profound pleasure and power. Rebecca felt nervous but ready. She'd come so far from the numb woman who'd first walked into this office. She was feeling again, not everything, not always, but the channels were reopening. "I want to try," she said. Session 12. Preparation. Before beginning the actual intimate alchemy practice, Beto spent a full session preparing Rebecca mentally and emotionally. "This practice can bring up a lot," he said. "Old memories, emotions, even trauma. It's important that you understand you're in complete control. You can stop at any time. This is about your reclamation of your own body and pleasure." He taught her a specific breathing pattern called the breath of fire. Rapid, rhythmic breathing through the nose that activated energy quickly. Then a slower, deeper pattern called the breath of waves. Long inhales and exhales that moved energy more gently. "You'll use both," Beto explained. "The fire to generate energy, the waves to move it through your body, and always, you'll pair breath with sound. Your voice is a channel for energy." They practiced the breathing together, Beto's calm voice guiding her. Rebecca felt energy building, warmth in her lower belly, tingling in her hands and feet. It wasn't sexual exactly, but it was definitely alive. "Good," Beto said. "You're starting to feel the energy. Now, in your practice, you'll combine this breathing with conscious touch and movement. Your body will guide you. It knows how to move, how to express energy. Your job is just to stay present and allow." He gave her detailed instructions for the practice and emphasized the importance of setting sacred space, creating an environment where she felt completely safe, comfortable, and undisturbed. "This is a practice of self-love in the deepest sense," Beto said. "You're not performing for anyone. You're not trying to achieve anything. You're simply being present with your own aliveness, your own pleasure, your own body." The practice. Week 1. Rebecca prepared carefully for her first intimate alchemy practice. She cleaned her bedroom, lit candles, put on soft music, a playlist of ambient sounds Beto had recommended. She'd taken a warm bath with essential oils, consciously relaxing her body. Lying on her bed, wearing comfortable clothes, she began with the breathing, long, deep inhales and exhales. She placed her hands on her heart and belly, feeling the rise and fall, grounding into the present moment. Following Beto's recorded guidance, she began to touch herself, starting with neutral areas, her arms, her legs, her face, not trying to arouse, just connecting, noticing texture, temperature, aliveness. Her mind tried to wander, to her shift schedule, to a difficult patient, to whether she'd locked the front door. Each time, gently, she brought herself back. "This is my time. This is my body. I am here." Gradually, as her breathing deepened and her touch continued, Rebecca felt warmth beginning to build. A subtle energy, a gentle awakening. She moved her hands to her breasts, touching them not functionally but appreciatively, feeling their weight, their sensitivity. A small sound escaped her, a soft sigh. It surprised her, but Beto's words came back. "Give voice to sensation. Sound moves energy." She sighed again, louder this time. And with the sound, the sensation intensified. Not dramatically, but perceptibly. She was feeling, actually feeling. Rebecca's hands moved lower, across her belly, her hips, her thighs. Each touch was conscious, present, reverent. She wasn't rushing toward anything. She was simply exploring, feeling, being. When her hand eventually moved between her legs, it was with the same quality of presence. Not seeking orgasm or achievement, but curiosity. What did she feel? What wanted attention? The sensation was subtle at first, just awareness of touch, of warmth. But as she continued breathing, as she allowed herself to make sound, as she moved her hips intuitively, the energy began to build. And then, a wave of genuine pleasure. Not overwhelming, but clear and real. Her body, after years of silence, was speaking. Tears mixed with the pleasure as Rebecca continued, breathing deeply, moving the energy through her body as Beto had taught. She felt it in her belly, her chest, her throat. Her whole body was coming alive. She didn't have an orgasm that first session, but something more important happened. She reconnected. She felt. She remembered that her body was a source of pleasure, of vitality, of life. When she finally rested, her body was humming with subtle energy. And for the first time in years, Rebecca felt truly present in her own skin. The Revelation, Session 13. When Rebecca returned to Beto's office the following week, she was visibly different. There was a light in her eyes, a vitality in her movements that hadn't been there before. "Something fundamental has shifted," she told him. "I've been practicing every day, and each time I feel more. Not just sexually, everything. I'm tasting food, really tasting it. I'm enjoying my garden. I played music and danced in my kitchen yesterday. I haven't danced I can't even remember how long." Beto's smile was warm and knowing. "You're remembering how to inhabit your life, not just observe it." "But there's something else," Rebecca continued, her voice thoughtful. "All these years, I thought my problem was lack of libido, lack of sex drive. But what I'm discovering is that it wasn't about sex at all. It was about aliveness. It was about being willing to feel." She leaned forward, trying to articulate the revelation that had come to her during her morning practice. "I shut down my capacity to feel, because feeling meant vulnerability. As a nurse, I see suffering every day. I witness death, trauma, pain. And somewhere along the way, I unconsciously decided that the safest thing was to not feel at all. If I couldn't feel pleasure, I also couldn't be overwhelmed by grief or horror." Beto nodded slowly. "Yes, this is profound insight. Numbness doesn't discriminate. When we shut down capacity for one kind of feeling, we shut down all of it." "But here's what I understand now," Rebecca said, her voice stronger. "My libido, my sexual energy, it's not separate from my life force. They're the same thing. When I reconnected with my capacity for sexual pleasure, I reconnected with my capacity to feel everything. Joy, grief, anger, tenderness. The sexual energy was the key that unlocked all the rest." She paused, emotion rising. "For so long I was so focused on other people's bodies, other people's needs, that I abandoned my own. I became a caretaker without needs, without desire, without aliveness. But I'm not just a nurse. I'm not just a helper. I'm a woman. I'm a body. I'm alive." Tears streamed down Rebecca's face, but they were tears of recognition, of homecoming. "This work wasn't about fixing my sex drive," she continued. "It was about reclaiming my right to feel, to want, to be embodied. The intimate alchemy practice, it's not just about sexual energy. It's about remembering that I deserve pleasure, that I deserve to feel good, that my body is not just a tool for serving others, but a source of vitality and joy for me." Beto's eyes were bright as he listened. "This is the deepest work," he said quietly. "What you've discovered is that your libido, your sexual energy, is inseparable from your will to live fully. When that's shut down, everything is shut down. When it's awakened, everything awakens." "I spent years forgetting how to feel," Rebecca said, "and now I'm remembering. Not just sexually, but in every way. I'm coming back to life." 3 months later. Integration. Rebecca stood in her garden in the early morning light, her hands in the soil as she transplanted seedlings. The earth was cool and damp, and she could feel every sensation: the texture of the dirt, the firmness of the roots, the warmth of the sun on her shoulders. She had continued her daily intimate alchemy practice, and it had become a non-negotiable part of her self-care routine. Some days the practice was deeply sensual, even leading to powerful orgasmic experiences, unlike any she'd known before. Full-bodied, energetic, waves of pleasure that moved through her entire being. Other days it was gentler, more meditative, just a reconnection with aliveness. But every day it reminded her she was not just a caretaker. She was a woman with needs, desires, sensations. She had a right to pleasure. She had a right to feel. Her nursing work had changed too. She was still excellent at her job, still compassionate and skilled. But she no longer absorbed others' suffering in the same way. She'd learned to be present without losing herself, to care without abandoning her own needs. I had to remember my body first, she'd explained to Sarah over coffee, before I could hold space for others' bodies without losing myself. Rebecca had also started dating, something she'd avoided for years. She was seeing someone now, a kind man she'd met at a community garden workshop. Their intimacy was slow, conscious, different from anything she'd experienced before. She brought the presence she'd learned through intimate alchemy into their connection, and it transformed everything. But more than any external relationship, Rebecca had developed a profound relationship with herself. She knew now that her aliveness, her libido, her sexual energy wasn't dependent on a partner or external validation. It was hers, an internal wellspring she could access through breath, presence, and conscious self-touch. As she finished planting the seedlings, Rebecca sat back on her heels and took a deep breath. Her body hummed with quiet vitality. She felt the breeze on her skin, heard the birds singing, smelled the rich earth. She was alive. She was feeling. She was here. The woman who had forgotten how to feel had remembered, and in remembering, she had reclaimed not just her libido, but her life itself.